So what happens next after Urepo Part 1 is that Cortex sends Godzilla down into an underground facility with a dozen of other Godzillas, and he tries to escape by using a jetpack and accidentally flashes a bunch of girls with his and then he makes his way into a unisex bathroom and everyone inside, and I stole all your Daru and I'm gonna delete my channel now. Goodbye and good riddance.
I realize now that I can't make Godzilla Compassion anymore. That's why I'm electing to tell you all the story of where it was gonna go, so that I won't leave you all hanging. And who knows, maybe if you want you could make like a fan continuation with the material I provided. It's not unheard of, and all things considered I'd probably approve of it. In any case, rather than continue to overpromise and underdeliver, I feel that this is the right thing to do. This video was a tough decision for me to make, but I think I have to make it eventually, just for the sake of fairness. I've even made a video before explaining myself on where Godzilla Compassion went and even put up a Discord link. But like, as the year went on, it became very clear to me that I had totally underestimated just what kind of life I was settling into. That video isn't gonna cut it anymore. The truth is, I don't think I'm able to make long videos like those anymore. At least with the schedule I have as of this point in time. You see, for reference, I started making Godzilla Compassion when I was in middle school. You could even hear my voice crack in the recording. That's peak cinematography. I was an awesome middle schooler. But that was back before I had things to do outside of the internet. Simply put, I just don't have the same kind of lifestyle that allowed me to make those videos to begin with anymore. Now with all that said, let's cover just what exactly Godzilla Compassion was going for. Godzilla Compassion was heavily based on Terranigma. In the first chapter of that game, you are tasked with restoring all the continents in the world. This was the impetus that led me to come up with what Godzilla Compassion was even about to begin with. Notice that the board names were simply anagrams of the names of the continents of the world, Kafir for Africa and Urepo for Europe. The board names in order were Kafir, Urepo, Sai, Narmak, Amorous, Sailor, and Antares, with one final world being located at the Earth's core. The namesake of Godzilla Compassion was actually just a compass. You know, a tool for navigators. I thought it fit the theming. I was a clever little boy back then, you know. Godzilla Compassion started out as a way for me to entertain my online friends. The original screenshots were made in real time, and essentially I made up what happened as I went. I think this method really forced me to put something out without thinking of how good the end product will be. It was a ton of fun this way. When I began to try to put the story up on YouTube, I realized that the graphics from the original run weren't going to cut it, hence I started respriting Kafir from the ground up. This experience actually contributed a lot to what I know about pixel art to this day. A little fun fact was that the entire chapter existed as one giant PNG file. I was using Microsoft Paint and I wasn't going to go through the hassle of saving every single screenshot individually, so what became of it was that there was this stupidly massive canvas that contained several sprite sheets and screenshots all in one. You've already seen what happens in Kafir in the first part of Urepo. You notice at the end of those videos a screen pops up, showing 4 tiles against a starry background. Those tiles were supposed to represent the 4 corners of the World Tarot card. They represent kings, and thus were supposed to be occupied by the monsters bearing that title, the King of the Monsters, King Kong, King Ghidorah, and King Caesar. The second part of Urepo begins in a stage called Headwaters. Godzilla's gauntlets were supposed to allow him to break the stromatolite boulders that stand in his way. Later, he meets Cortex again, who teaches him how these different crab statues work. By this point, he starts calling Gary by his real full legal name. Gary would have commented on how he didn't even notice anything was wrong until he looked over his screenshots. It is at this point that he realizes that none of the safety precautions he had taken at the start of the playthrough mattered at all. The game could simply alter his mind to make him accept the unexplainable. It is also at this point that he starts to have delusions that he has a duty to document the game in its entirety. He begins the level proper. He swims up in the air and goes to find the nearest crab statue. He kills an enemy that was guarding it, accidentally powering it up, and that's about it. That was all I ever made for Urepo Part 2. What used to take me like a week at most to finish now takes months due to real life obligations that I have to attend. I've already posted pretty much everything there is to see over on my Twitter account. It's not that I'm burnt out or I've come to hate my own creation that I no longer work on it. Far from. It's just that being realistic, unless things change, it might take years to get this one chapter up to an acceptable par of quality. I'm not being pressured to release anything here. Frankly, I don't mind if anyone asks when the chapter's gonna release. I'm just saying. I can't put my fans through all of that, it's just out of respect. And hereby I apologize for leading some of you on into thinking that more Godzilla Compassion is gonna come out. Now, let's answer some questions. Who is the shadowy figure in the Canal City level? Why, it's no other than Neutro, of course. Neutro was a monster contributed to by Kohola 12. He was once the mayor of the Canal City, but his people turned on him, and he was exiled when Kong took over as the leader of all Eurepo. Who was Kong's master? Kong's master is the main antagonist of the story. His name is Ego. You've seen a silhouette of him when Gary heat beamed an ankle biter. That was supposed to be a sign that he had alerted the master of this dimension he was in. He was based on Am from the point-and-click I Have No Mouth and I'm a Scream game. Ego was the caretaker of this world, but over the years he had grown bitter, and had begun to see his denizens as no more than little playthings for his sadistic games. This was why Kefir was in a drought, and its denizens lived in abject misery. The boards also used to be more interconnected. This was the world after all. The Molluskron cameo in Kefir was supposed to imply that he was from Eurepo. In Eurepo, Ego had blocked the river at the headwaters and secured the moon to the earth in order to stop the flow of fresh water and stop the tides respectively. They were guarded by two giant serpents, Plasmius and Gamera. Plasmius had the ability to shoot lightning from his eyes. He resided over the headwaters. I imagine his fight to be similar to the Licorice Dragon fight in Mickey Mouse. The way he was supposedly defeated was by blocking out his eyes with rocks, but that wouldn't be enough because, get this? Gumo returns! He repays your kindness by helping you defeat Plasmius, causing him to explode internally and saving the river. A similar thing happens on the moon stage with Neutro against Gamera. In my brain it would have been like Guts and Zod against Ganishka, but obviously that's very ambitious and it was definitely going to look different. Not that I really thought about it. I only worry about things once I get to them. Maybe that's my problem. In any case, Eurepo is saved and Gary is free to move on to the altar. The next few worlds haven't been adapted yet, of course, but way back there existed the original run of Compassion that went up to Salir. Sadly, it formally ended when the server that hosted it went down, and with it most of the images that exist of it are lost. Let's review what we would have seen. Excalibur and Vipern are OCs belonging to the Alpha Yith. He was actually there when Godzilla Compassion made its first original run, so I thought it would have been a nice gesture to add them into the story. Again, back then I was only having fun. I do think I had woven them into the story in a pretty clever way though. In the story, I had portrayed Vipern as a ferocious demon from another dimension, working with Ego to stop Gary from going through all the boards and cementing his changes with every altar that he claims. But he wasn't alone. His polar opposite was Excalibur, a serpent warrior king wielding a magic emerald sword that has slitted forth to oppose him. They're kinda two halves of an Ouroboros. They're gonna fight no matter what. The rest of the boards had pretty unique problems that Gary had to solve. Sai had a problem with war, Gary had to stop it and we would have seen a nuclear warhead get detonated similar to the first chapter of Godzilla Replay. Narmak faced the problem of overconsumption. It was a world full of robots and a secondary antagonist lives here. He would have been responsible for producing and exporting all the robots you've seen on the rest of the boards, Kong's castle included. Aimrus was basically dominated by Vipern and you had to confront him and fight against his sorcery. Sailor delves back into Gary's personal past, and finally Antares was where Ego's soul was located. It would have been shaped a lot like the flower on the altar floor, which in and of itself was based on the natural pattern of a sand dollar, only this time with 6 sides radiating outwards like the layout of a European star fortress. Ego's soul was located at the central altar. In order to get there, Gary must beat every stage at every arm of the board, each one themed after the continents he had previously restored. After that, he will access the altar to fight Ego inside. He would then be accompanied by his other Freudian counterparts, the id and the superego. But as we know, they're both kind of submerged and have to take orders from him. I think mechanically he would have fought a lot like, spoilers, Psycho Iris from Psycho Waluigi. It would have been a pretty tense boss fight, but still visually fun to look at. Gary beats Ego and destroys his soul. Now he's finally glad that's over with and can rest to watch the fireworks. But then, Gumo jumps in at the last moment and steals the altar from him, replacing Ego as the new caretaker and rips Gary's soul out from his body and into the game. We are now at the Earth's core and Gumo has taken a titanic new form even bigger than Ego's. He plans to destroy Gary as thanks for his efforts. All seems hopeless. And yet, something is stopping Gary from being killed. As it turns out, all the denizens of the boards he had previously helped are pooling their energy and trying to help Gary in his struggle against Gumo. Gary's avatar absorbs all of that energy that he helped create and begins to transform into something much greater. Godzilla Earth! The two titans now held equal advantage against one another, and after much struggle, Gary is triumphant. Such a battle had overwhelmed the cartridge that it blew asunder completely, and Gary's soul now returned to his body, able to document what had happened to him and the ultimate fate of the NES Godzilla cartridge. He ends his playthrough on a high note, having documented all he could, and goes to sleep that night, for the last time in his life. In the altar of Antares, a familiar soul had come to manifest. It seemed content to now watch over the beautiful world that it once helped create, grow older, and flourish. And that's the end of NES Godzilla Compassion. Some of it might read as really cheesy, which it really is. It's essentially just an anime that they happen to be telling with video game aesthetics and other people's intellectual properties. Frankly, I would have been happy enough to get this out regardless. I've derived a lot of enjoyment working on this over the years, and hopefully this can inspire some creativity and amusement. Am I proud of this? Of course. Would I have preferred to have been able to pull off all of this ambitious stuff? Absolutely. And a part of me wishes that I had, but I hope that for now, I am able to provide at least some manner of closure. I think that's all I have to say for this video. Thanks again for sticking with me all these years, I really do appreciate it. It's not often that I get to say that in a video. In any case, have a wonderful day, and see you next time. This has been RoboFish, signing out.